I wasn't supposed to hear any of it. The video call had been running longer than usual, and my daughter had stepped away to answer the door. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my reading glasses still on, waiting. The tablet propped against the fruit bowl. The connection stayed open. That's when my son-in-law walked into frame. He didn't see me. Or maybe he forgot I was there. Either way, he sat down on their couch, phone in hand, and started talking to someone I couldn't see. His voice was loose, comfortable, the way men talk when they think the room is empty. "She still thinks the bakery is hers," he said, laughing low. "She signs whatever Deb puts in front of her, always has." Then my daughter's voice from somewhere off-screen. "Does she even read it?" He leaned back. "Why would she? She trusts us." I didn't move. My hand was resting on the table, fingers near my coffee mug, and I just left it there. The kitchen smelled like the cinnamon rolls I'd made that morning because my granddaughter was coming over and cinnamon rolls are her favorite. The smell felt wrong suddenly. Too warm, too ordinary for what I was hearing. Deb walked back into frame, caught her husband's eye, and smiled in a way I had never seen her smile at me. Not once in 23 years. I reached over. I ended the call. I sat in the silence for a long time. Then I pulled the fruit bowl closer and set my glasses on top of it and said, quietly to no one at all, "I need to look at those papers." When Harold died, people brought casseroles. That's what I remember most about the first week. The doorbell, the foil-covered dishes, the careful way everyone spoke to me like I might shatter as they used a normal tone of voice. It was kind. It was suffocating. And then it stopped, and the quiet moved in, and the quiet was something else entirely. We had built the bakery together, Harold and I. Not a franchise, not a chain, a real one, the kind where you know the regulars by name and they know yours. We started in a rented kitchen on Delaney Street in 1987, selling bread and cinnamon rolls and, eventually, wedding cakes. By the time Harold got sick, we had 2 locations and a name people recognized. Deborah had worked there summers in high school. She knew how to run the register, how to charm a difficult customer, how to make herself indispensable. When she married my son Theo, I thought I was getting a partner, someone who understood what the bakery meant. I told myself that for a long time. After Harold, I leaned on them both. Theo handled the vendor contracts because negotiating always exhausted me. Deb took over payroll because she was better with spreadsheets. It felt like family sharing a load. That's what I told myself. It felt like love in the practical language of people who are too busy to say it out loud. The first time Deb brought papers for me to sign, it was a Tuesday. She set a folder on the counter between the register and the pastry case and said, "This is just the updated LLC filing. State requires it annually now. Your accountant has already reviewed it." My accountant was 81 and had retired the previous spring. I hadn't replaced him yet. I didn't say that. I signed. The second time was about 6 months later, a line of credit for equipment upgrades. The ovens in the second location were aging, and Theo had found a good deal on commercial replacements. He walked me through the numbers on his phone quickly, while a delivery driver waited by the back door. The monthly payment seemed manageable. I signed. There were others. I kept them in a manila folder in the drawer beneath the cash register because that's where Harold always kept important papers. I told myself I'd read them carefully when things slowed down. Things never slowed down. I don't know exactly when I stopped being the owner and started being the collateral. That's the honest answer. It happened in increments, one signature at a time. After I ended the video call, I sat in my kitchen for nearly an hour without doing anything. Then I got up, rinsed my coffee mug, and went to find the folder. I had moved it when I reorganized the pantry in September. It was in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet Harold kept in the hallway, the metal one with the dent on the left side, from when we moved it down the stairs in 1994. I opened the drawer and took the folder out and sat down at the kitchen table again. The first document I recognized. The LLC filing. My name, the business address, standard language. Fine. The second was the equipment line of credit. Also fine, or so I thought. The third I didn't recognize at all. It was a personal guarantee. My name listed as guarantor for a commercial lease, not at either bakery location, an address I didn't know. 12,000 square feet. In a retail corridor 15 miles from where I lived. I read it twice, then a third time. My signature was at the bottom, above a date from 8 months ago. I had no memory of signing it. I kept reading. There was a business formation document for something called Hartwell Culinary Group LLC. My name appeared as a founding member. Below it, Theo's name. Below that, Deb's. I had never heard of Hartwell Culinary Group. I had never agreed to found anything with anyone. There was a promissory note, $95,000, issued to Hartwell Culinary Group, my name as co-signer. The funds, according to the attached wire confirmation, had gone to an account I didn't recognize. I set the papers down and looked out the window. The yard was the way Harold always kept it, tidy. A little bare in winter, the rose bushes cut back to their canes. I looked at it for a while. Then I went to the filing cabinet again and took out every folder, every piece of paper with my name on it. I spread them across the kitchen table and I started reading, all of it, every page, every line. It took 4 hours. By the end, my reading glasses had left red marks on either side of my nose, and my coffee had gone cold twice. But I knew what I was looking at. My name had been used as the financial foundation for a business I knew nothing about. My credit, my stability, my decades of careful work, all of it borrowed against, without my understanding, one polite signature at a time. I collected everything into a neat stack. I photographed each page with my phone. I created a folder in my email and sent the photos to myself with the subject line, "For the record." Then I called my friend Loretta, who had been a paralegal for 30 years before she retired, and I said, "I need the name of a good attorney. Not a nice one, a good one." She didn't ask why. She gave me a name. The office of Spaulding and Greer was on the 4th floor of a building downtown, the kind with marble floors in the lobby, and a receptionist who spoke quietly and offered you water when you sat down. I had never needed a lawyer for anything more serious than Harold's estate, and that attorney had been a family friend who charged us half his usual rate and brought a fruit basket to the funeral. This was different. Claudette Greer was 62, direct, and had the kind of stillness that told you she had heard worse. I sat across from her desk with my folder and my printed photographs, and I told her everything. The video call, the papers, the timeline, the things I had signed, and the things I had not knowingly signed. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you still have majority ownership on record with the state?" I said I believed so. She said, "Then we have somewhere to start." We spent 2 hours together that first meeting. She explained what a personal guarantee meant for my liability. She explained what the promissory note could do to my credit if Hartwell Culinary Group defaulted, which, from the financial documents I'd brought, looked likely. She explained that signing something you don't understand does not mean you cannot challenge it, especially if the circumstances suggest the signer was misled about its nature. She used a phrase I wrote down afterward, undue influence facilitated by a position of trust. I wrote it down because it described exactly what had happened, and because seeing it named clearly in plain language made something settle in my chest that had been loose since the night before. Before I left, she said, "I want you to go home and change your passwords. Every account, every login, the business accounts, the personal accounts, your email, your phone carrier. Tonight." I did. Theo called on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after I'd started meeting with Claudette. His voice was warm and easy, the voice I'd known since he was 7 years old, calling up from the backyard that he was hungry. "Hey, Mum, just checking in. You doing okay over there?" I said I was fine. "Keeping busy." He paused. Then, casual as anything, he mentioned that a new investor was interested in expanding the bakery concept. Exciting opportunity, the kind that didn't come along often. They just needed a bit of working capital secured quickly, and since I was already part of the structure on paper, it would be simple. Clean. "How much?" I asked. 150, he said. 1,000. But it's short term, you'd barely notice it. "I'd like to see the paperwork," I said. "Can you bring it by?" He said of course. He suggested Saturday morning. He said Deb would come too, like that was a comfort. I called Claudette after we hung up. I told her about the call. She told me to say nothing more, sign nothing, and asked whether I was comfortable having a small recording device running during the Saturday visit. In Tennessee, she told me, only one party in a conversation needs to consent to recording it. That party is you. I said I was comfortable. I bought a small digital recorder at the electronics store the next day. I practiced using it twice that evening at the kitchen table, alone, speaking into it, playing it back. It fit in my cardigan pocket with room to spare. Saturday morning I made coffee and set out the good cups, the ones with the blue rim that Harold's mother brought from Ohio in 1971. Theo and Deb arrived at 10. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd spread all those documents 3 weeks earlier, and they were warm and attentive in the way people are when they want something. Deb had a folder, inside it a document already prepared. My name on the signature line, printed in neat type. I picked it up and read it slowly. Guarantor. Again, secured against the bakery's existing assets. I set it down. I folded my hands on the table. I said, "I'm going to need a few days to have my attorney look at this." Theo's expression shifted, just briefly, then he recovered. "Of course," he said, "take your time." I smiled. I said I would. They left 20 minutes later. The coffee cups were still full. I took the recorder out of my pocket and pressed stop. The revocations were filed on a Thursday. I know because I drove downtown and sat in Claudette's conference room while her paralegal walked through each one. The power of attorney Theo had accumulated over 3 separate documents, revoked, my name removed from Hartwell Culinary Group's founding documents, with a formal dispute filed regarding the validity of my original signature. A freeze requested on 2 joint business accounts where my credit had been used as backing. Claudette had also connected me with a forensic accountant named Cheryl, a small, precise woman who wore reading glasses on a chain and spoke about numbers the way some people speak about old photographs, with patience and a kind of intimacy. Cheryl had gone through the bakery's financials for the past 2 years and found what she called irregular disbursements. Money moved through vendor payment lines that didn't correspond to any actual vendor. Money moved to accounts connected to Hartwell Culinary Group, not enormous amounts individually, steady ones. It added up to $61,000 over 22 months. I sat with that number for a moment in Claudette's conference room. $61,000. Harold and I had argued once, genuinely argued, about whether to spend $400 on a new stand mixer when the old one still worked fine. We'd been married 31 years and it was one of the only times we raised our voices at each other. I thought about that argument while Cheryl explained a disbursement pattern, then I signed the authorization for her to provide her findings to the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. On the way home, I stopped at the bakery. The morning rush had long passed and the afternoon was slow, the way it always is between 2 and 4. My manager, a young woman named Opal who had worked there since college, was restocking the pastry case. She looked up when I walked in. "You okay?" she asked. "Getting there," I said. I sat at the corner table for a while with a cup of coffee and a slice of the lemon pound cake we'd been making since 1991. The recipe was mine. The oven Harold had saved up to buy. The regulars who came in on Tuesday mornings and knew to ask for the back table, all of it mine. It had always been mine. I had just forgotten to act like it. They came on a Monday evening. I heard the car in the driveway before the knock, and I had already set my phone on the side table with the record function running. Claudette had told me she would be available by phone if I needed her. I had her number on my screen. Theo came in without quite looking at me. Deb stood slightly behind him, which was new. Usually she was the one who filled a room. Theo said they needed to talk. He said there had been some kind of misunderstanding with the accounts, that everything was being blown out of proportion, that this was a family matter and should be handled as one. I sat down in Harold's chair, the big one by the window, and I let him finish. Then I said, "I've asked Claudette Greer to join us." He stopped. Claudette came in from the kitchen where she had been waiting. She set a folder on the coffee table and sat across from them and said good evening. She explained that all financial authorizations connected to my name had been rescinded as of the previous Thursday. She explained that a forensic accounting report had been filed with the state. She explained that the recorded conversation from the previous Saturday, along with an earlier recorded call, had been preserved and provided to the investigator assigned to the case. I watched my son's face while she spoke. I had known that face for 51 years. I had held it when he was an infant. Red-faced and furious at the world, I had looked at it across tables and at baseball games and at his father's funeral. I looked at it now and tried to find something familiar in it, and I did. But it wasn't comfort. It was grief. The quiet kind that settles in when you finally stop pretending. Deb said, low and tight, "You recorded us." Claudette answered before I could. "Tennessee is a one-party consent state," she said simply. "My client had every right." They didn't stay much longer. When they left, Deb went first. Theo paused at the door. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. Some moments don't need words. They just need to be witnessed and let go. I locked the door behind them. Claudette gathered her things, gave me a practical, solid handshake and said I'd done everything correctly. Then she left too, and the house was quiet again. And the quiet was different from the quiet that had come in after Harold died. That quiet had felt like subtraction. This one felt like ground. The voicemail came 4 days later. Deb's voice unsteady in a way I'd never heard before. She said there had been notices. She said Theo's business credit was being reviewed. She said they were trying to understand what had happened, as if it were a weather event, as if no one had chosen it. I saved the message and filed it with everything else. Word gets around in a small business community. I don't know exactly who said what, but within a month, 2 of the vendors Theo had been cultivating for Hartwell Culinary Group had withdrawn their proposals. The commercial lease I'd unknowingly guaranteed was successfully disputed and my name removed. The promissory note was under review pending the forensic report. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not the other business owners on the block, not the women from my Tuesday morning book club, not even Loretta, though she asked once, and I told her it was being handled. She nodded and didn't ask again. She understood that some things you carry quietly until they're finished. Opal ran the bakery well during that period. Better than I'd realized, honestly. I started coming in earlier, staying longer. I relearned which vendors Harold had trusted and why. I updated the business accounts and put them solely in my name. I started reading every document before I signed it, even the routine ones. And if I didn't understand a line, I asked for it to be explained, and if the explanation didn't satisfy me, I waited. Cheryl helped me set up a cleaner financial structure, a separate personal trust, distinct from the business entity, that protected the bakery's assets from any future liability claims. She explained it in plain language, slowly, twice. I wrote down the parts I wanted to remember. I took those notes home and kept them in the filing cabinet in the hallway, next to the drawer with the dent. One afternoon I went through that cabinet entirely, organized it, threw away what was no longer relevant. What remained was mine, every document, every signature, every page, something I had chosen to hold. The following spring, I had the deed to the Delaney Street location updated, just mine. The second location I sold quietly to a woman who had been running her own catering business for 12 years and had been looking for a permanent space. She paid a fair price. She kept 3 of my staff. She called me 2 months later to say a regular had come in and asked for the lemon pound cake recipe, and she hoped that was okay. I told her it was. I gave her the recipe. With part of the proceeds, I had the Delaney Street kitchen refitted. New ovens, the kind Harold would have stood in front of for 10 minutes reading every specification before deciding. I didn't stand there for 10 minutes. I knew what I wanted. Theo and I have not spoken since that Monday evening. I don't know what his life looks like now. That sounds colder than I mean it. I think about him sometimes, the boy he was, the choices he made, the place where those 2 things stopped being the same person. Grief is patient. It doesn't require action. It just sits with you until you're ready to set it down. Deb sent a card at Christmas. No message inside, just her name. I kept it for a day and then put it in the recycling bin, not with anger, just with the calm of someone who has decided what she is keeping and what she is not. Opal got promoted to general manager. I gave her a raise and a small ownership stake, documented properly, reviewed by Claudette, signed by both of us with full understanding. She cried a little. I told her not to because it would make me cry too, and I had things to do. On a Thursday in April, I unlocked the bakery at 6 in the morning the way I had done hundreds of times. The light was that particular early spring light that comes in low through the east windows and turns everything gold for about 20 minutes. I stood in it. I started the first proof of dough. I put the coffee on. The bell above the door chimed when the first regular came in at 7:15. She sat at the corner table, same as always, and asked for a cinnamon roll and whatever I recommended that morning. I brought her the lemon pound cake too because it was Thursday, and on Thursdays I always made extra. I went back behind the counter, tied my apron, and got to work. The bakery was mine. It had always been mine. I just had to remember that. I keep thinking about the cinnamon rolls. That morning before everything changed, I had made them because my granddaughter was coming over. I had the kitchen warm, the oven running, the smell of something good moving through every room. And while all of that was happening, while I was being a grandmother and a mother and the kind of woman who makes things from scratch on a Tuesday, my daughter and her husband were quietly talking about me like I was a problem they had already solved. That's the part that took the longest to sit with. Not the money, not the documents, the fact that I had been living inside a story they had written for me without my knowing, and I had been playing the role so willingly, so completely, that I hadn't noticed the script wasn't mine. What I understand now is that what happened was a consequence of choices, theirs and mine both. Theirs were deliberate, mine were made from love, and love without discernment is just vulnerability dressed up in good intentions. I trusted where I should have verified. I deferred where I should have read. I told myself that signing without asking was an act of generosity, when really it was an abdication. I handed over the pen and called it faith. There is a kind of courage that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with certainty or a clear plan. It arrives on a quiet evening when you spread papers across a kitchen table and decide that understanding your own life is not optional. That's what I had to find. Not a dramatic kind of strength, but the steady, unglamorous kind. The kind that makes you drive downtown with a folder and sit across from a stranger and say, plainly, I need help understanding what was done to me. The kind that lets you keep going without needing anyone to witness it. And there is a kind of integrity that only gets tested when it costs something. It would have been easier to call Theo and let him talk me out of it. He had done it before, more times than I want to count. The voice of your own child is a powerful thing. It can make you doubt what you saw with your own eyes. But I had read those documents by then. I had seen my name on accounts I didn't recognize and loans I didn't remember. I knew what I knew, and choosing to act on what I knew, even when it meant the hardest loss of my life, was the most honest thing I had ever done for myself. The bakery is still on Delaney Street. The lemon pound cake is still on the menu. Opal unlocks the door every morning at 6 and the regulars come in and sit at their usual tables. That continuity, that small, ordinary faithfulness to something Harold and I built, is not nothing. It is, in fact, everything. I don't think my son made me a victim. I think he made a choice, and I made a different one. What each of us becomes after a moment like that is not predetermined. It is decided, quietly, one action at a time. I decided to know what I was signing. I decided to understand what was mine. I decided to stand in my own bakery on a Thursday morning, tie my apron, and get to work. That was enough. It turned out to be more than enough.